As we've heard, America's growing debt is having an impact on the international stage. The draft recommendations released by the co-chairs of the President's Deficit Commission add up to nearly $4 trillion in deficit reduction through 2020. But the proposed spending cuts, Social Security and Medicare cuts, and tax increases are getting a chilly reception from Democrats and Republicans, a sure sign of the difficult task ahead. While deep spending cuts in Europe are bringing people to the streets in protest. Two members of the commission appointed by President Obama are with us this morning: David Cote, Chairman and CEO of Honeywell, and Democratic Senator Kent Conrad. Thank you both for coming. Welcome to both of you. You were just on President Obama's trip abroad. How does this deficit and the big troubles and problems ahead with this play in trying to gin up business abroad and jobs?
Well, I think everything ends up being interconnected. You certainly, in my view, want increased trade. Trade, you might expect, I believe, is a good thing, and it benefits both sides, and you want to have countries arguing about commercial issues, not geographic issues.
Even
so I think it makes a lot of
Americans
sense.
are worried that their jobs are going overseas. You've said that it can't be seen as a zero-sum game.
Well, that's one of my issues, and quite honestly, I think the media helps to perpetuate this, is that economics is viewed as a zero-sum game. My loss is your gain, my gain is your loss. And the only reason you do things economically is because both sides win. When you go to the store and you buy something, the store's happy, you're happy. You both benefit. And that seems to get lost when we start talking about economics on a grander scale.
Senator Conrad, there has been so much talk now about the recommendations by the co-chairs of the Deficit Commission, the Fiscal Commission. Is there any area you think that there's going to be any compromise on this? I mean, they're attacking and talking about really sacrosanct parts of the American political sphere here.
You know, a certain amount of this is shock therapy. You know, there are different options, and of course, what everybody is fastened on are the most extreme of the options. But look, the important thing for people to know is we are borrowing 40 cents of every dollar we spend. That's utterly unsustainable. It can't continue much longer. So it's got to be dealt with. If you look at our spending, it's the highest it's been as a share of our economy in 60 years. Revenue is the lowest it's been as a share of our economy in 60 years. So we're going to have to work both sides of the equation. It's critically important we do, or we will become a second-rate economic power. That is the hard reality.
But in terms of things like mortgage interest and all those things that the panel is recommending, these are things that Americans have really relied on forever, just about, and so many of them. Is that even a starter?
Well, there is, as I referenced earlier, there is one proposal that eliminates all the tax preferences, all the tax deductions, all the tax exclusions, and uses 90% of the revenue to reduce rates, only 10% to reduce the deficit. I don't favor that approach. I think we need something that represents a continuation of the mortgage deduction, although reformed. To apply only to primary residences, for example. But we need to continue the child credit. We need to continue the earned income tax credit. But fundamentally, if we're going to raise revenue, I don't think the way to do it is to raise rates. I think the way to do it is to eliminate some of the loopholes that exist in the system. We have a tax system now that is just loaded, chock-a-block full of preferences, loopholes. We're allowing $100 billion a year to be lost to offshore tax havens, another $50 billion to abusive tax shelters. That can't be allowed to continue.
And on another, well, on the same issue, but Paul Krugman, the economist, Nobel Prize winner, who's going to be on our roundtable, has written this week that it really is basically tax breaks again for the rich and more onus on the middle class, dressed up as something new.
Yeah. Well, in my view, democracy seemed to be uniquely suited to putting the traffic light up after the fourth accident. Now, we can't wait for the fourth accident here, and that's why I applaud Senator Conrad for Senator Graham when his comments, trying to get out in front of something, because it's too easy for the demagogues and the polemicists to respond to something, just kind of go into their neutral corner and screaming, as opposed to saying there's a time to pull together. This is one of those times. There are times when we should pull apart and pluralism and all that good stuff where people argue their point of view. But there are times when we have to pull together, and this is one of those times. And it scares me that as a financially conversant CEO, I didn't know how bad this was going to get in the next 10 years. I could see where it was today, but I couldn't see what was going to happen in the next 10 years because people want to point to stuff like Obamacare, stimulus, Bush tax cuts. And the thing that everybody misses is it's my generation, the baby boomers, who are going to flow through Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. It's going to crush the system. And I think the American public is ready for this discussion, but I don't see anybody having that discussion with them, and that needs to happen.
Well, are the Democrats going to allow these cuts that are being suggested in Social Security, Medicare?
Well, I'm a Democrat,
well,
and I'm saying to my colleagues,
and the liberal wing of the party,
it is absolutely imperative that we take this on for the country's sake. And are we going to have to make some changes to Social Security? Certainly we are. Social Security is going to go cash negative in 5 years. It's going to go broke in 2037. Medicare, we've just extended the life of it by the health care reform package, which has gotten almost no attention, but still, it's prepared to go permanently cash negative in just 10 years. So obviously those things have to be reformed. There have to be some changes.
Let me talk also about the international implications and the currency wars that we were just talking about that came up during the Seoul trip. Alan Greenspan, the former chairman of the Fed, has said that America is pursuing a policy of weakening its currency. And this is what the current Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner said in response to that.
I have enormous respect for Alan Greenspan, of course, for the privilege of working with him for a long period of years, but that's not an accurate description of either the Federal Reserve's policies or our policy. We will never seek to weaken our currency as a tool to gain competitive advantage or to grow economy. It's not an effective strategy for any country, certainly not for the United States.
I mean, how do you assess, first, what the QE2 is, which is what he's talking about, quantitative easing, and isn't that viewed as, certainly overseas, as an attempt to weaken the currency, just as they're accusing China of doing?
Well, I would say managing currency is beyond my pay grade, so I don't normally get into that one. But I would say, in my view,
the effects thereof in business
but I would
is
say,
your pay grade.
Well, I was one of the guys. I've been in favor of everything. So when they were talking about stimulus, home modification, the Federal Reserve was doing what they needed to. I don't think the country realized how close we were to a depression. And I've said to the senator several times, I don't think any politician ever gets credit for the problem they avoid. They get a lot of credit if they're in the middle of the crisis and start screaming and yelling, but avoiding a problem doesn't get a lot of merit. This deficit is one of those situations.
Were you shocked that the president could not close a trade deal with Seoul, a major ally? The United States has propped up South Korea, troops there. I mean, how is this possible?
No, I'm not at all shocked. In fact, I think the president, what he did is a show of strength rather than weakness.
How?
Because he refused to take a bad deal. Look, I've been deeply involved with negotiating with our Korean friends, and they have used every stratagem to avoid previous commitments they have made. And the president called them on it and said, look, you said you would open our market, your market, and you've got an obligation to do it, and I'm not going to accept just any deal in order to have a deal. Thank goodness we got a president now who is standing up, even to some of our allies, and saying we're insisting on fair treatment.
And what did you think when some of our allies called American policy clueless economic policy?
That
doesn't show a huge amount of respect.
Yeah, this was separate from the Korean deal. This involved the question of what the Federal Reserve is doing, which is not the president. This is the Federal Reserve policy to inject liquidity into the economy, given the fact 1 in every 6 people in this country is either underemployed or unemployed. So certainly additional steps need to be taken. I think it's very clear on the fiscal side, we've about run the course. There's not going to be another stimulus package. So if there's going to be more liquidity, it's going to have to come on the monetary side from the Federal Reserve. And to say that they're clueless, I think, frankly, demeans those who make the charge. Look, we have, I would be quick to remind them, we have saved their bacon over and over and over all across Europe. They need to remember who's been there for them when they needed help.
On that note, Senator, Mr. Cote, thank you very much indeed for joining us.